Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And as we are releasing this, not necessarily when we're recording it, but because we're a little ahead, we're getting there, y'all. We are coming to the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. Yay! So we are opening with the classic movie, Real Women Have Curves, for our Feminist Movie of the Month. And you know what, Anney, I have so many memories about this movie. I have distinct memories. And though it follows a Latina immigrant family, it still somehow made me feel seen. Like I felt connected to the movie. So this was released in 2002. I had just graduated. I was now in college trying to figure everything out. So it really felt like not only was it around my same age and experiences, although I didn't get a full scholarship to Columbia. That would have been lovely. But, you know, like feeling this movie was different because we've been talking about all the different, you know, old school romantic comedies with a very oftentimes skinny white lead, being cutesy, you know, the pixie manic. It was that era. So having this type of movie come out was something that spoke a lot to me. Maybe it was the fact that we're seeing an actress that was normal. Like her body type is normal. Like it's not, which we will talk about. Like it is referred to as being fat, but to me, I'm like, no, this is what normal looks like. And I wish at that point, I was like, I need to look like that. Like I felt like I was even bigger than her and made me feel some type of way. And just how she loved herself no matter what. Like she was angry, rightly so. Like you have that angst still in this movie. America Ferrera got that angst. But it could have also been that it was a person of color being a lead in this movie. I love that. And that she wasn't being fetishized or being a stereotype and more confident in herself and trying to bring confidence to her family and even to her community. Like I loved everything about this. Again, it could have been all of these things. But yeah, this movie really felt like it was for normal girls and it was representing brown and people of color. And for me, who lived in a society that was all white, essentially, seeing this felt awesome, especially because it was celebrated. The movie was actually really well received. So it was celebrated for its cast and content. And as one reviewer wrote about the movie, one of the strengths of Real Women Have Curves is that it isn't about just one thing. It's about many things. A coming-of-age drama centered on a mother-daughter conflict. It also explores the immigrant experience, the battle to accept oneself, imperfections and all, and the importance of personal dignity. And I thought that too. At the very beginning, I was like, how do we describe this movie? There's so many things. It's not just one thing. It's not just a girl going to college. It's not just a romantic comedy. It's not just like it's so many things. And it felt very real. Again, its release brought on a much needed conversation about the experiences of Latina girls in U.S. culture, as well as conversations about body image at the time. I think this is where we were finally starting to hit into the body positivity and away from all of the eating disorders that we saw and all the complications that magazines and media was trying to tell us at the time about what was wrong with women and what was wrong with girls and what they thought was normal. So this was such a great timing for this movie. It has held up pretty well since its original release and was even recognized in 2021 as part of the Significant Movies and Movie Makers exhibit at the Academy of Museum of Motion Pictures. But yeah, it also had garnered many awards before then, such as the Sundance Film Awards, Special Jury Prize for Acting for both America Ferrera and Lupe Ontiveros, and so many other awards. And Lupe played the mother. I think she was in Selena too. Like she is a caliber actress, and I felt like she made this movie so perfect. Like she played that mother figure too well. And as a side note, this was America Ferrera's movie debut. The movie was directed by Patricia Cardosa and was originally a play written by Josefina Lopez, who makes an appearance in the movie as well. She also co-wrote the screenplay as well. From what I gathered, Cardosa hasn't done too many movies since then, or too much. She has directed several TV shows, I think, and a few movies, but hasn't done much since then. Josefina's play, I think, is still going. There's a musical now.
Yep.
I love a good musical.
So many movies we do on here, I'm like, they have a musical now. I love it.
Well, this was originally a play, so to jump into a musical seemed pretty natural. And I could see how this could be a good musical, to be honest. Like the way you could travel through. Yeah, like I feel like if it's going on, we should go try to see it. Anyway,
get us tickets.
I know, we need to find tickets. So let's jump into it. We have 18-year-old high school senior Anna Garcia, played by America Ferrera, who is finishing up her last year at Beverly Hills High School. She's a young girl trying to accomplish her dreams as well as balance her home life and keeping her family happy. Sort of. She's just really frustrated. She has worked hard at school to achieve something different from what her mother tries to push onto her. Her teacher, Mr. Guzman, played by George Lopez. I love that he just popped up. I forgot he was in this. But anyway, he has been someone who has encouraged her to try for more, including going to college. He lets her know that he knows the dean from Columbia University and encourages her to submit an application, which she responds that she'll think about it. But, she lets him know, my life is not like that. My family is not going to approve. It'll be really hard. At home, after school, her family throws her a graduation party to celebrate, and soon the party turns as her mother, Carmen, has already started nagging her about her not eating too much cake because of her weight and, again, her prospects of finding a husband. Again, the mother, Carmen, she plays it so well. She's got the figurines to try to get her to get married. Like she gave up on her other daughter, Estella, who is older but provides for the family. Like so many things in here. So good. And we have Mr. Guzman stopping by to try to talk to the parents about Anna's prospects for college. But her mother is very resistant, even talking Anna into going to work with her sister at her sister's clothing factory. So she is now a part of this. Even though Anna doesn't want to, she knows what this is going to lead to, and she's going to get stuck. But she eventually gives in. After some conflicts, Anna tries to help Estella. So Estella's character is fantastic. You don't get to see much about her except through Anna's perspective, to be honest. But Anna tries to help. She realizes Estella is doing a lot and tries to help, but doesn't always do the right things. Like her attitude is so great and you want her to win. But like the moment where she tries to go to the contractors to get an advance, that does not go well. And like Estella is really embarrassed and upset about this interaction, not happy. But in the end, Anna does help as much as she can, whether it's with the dresses or encouraging Estella to do more, being more forward. In her time there, she gets to confront her mother, who continues to fat shame her and ridicule her and Estella and everybody else in that room. She just goes after everyone. After an especially hot afternoon, Anna takes off her shirt in order to cool down, to her mother's dismay, and soon encourages the other ladies as well. And they all talk about their flaws, but also it kind of comes to a point where they start encouraging one another and telling each other to love themselves. Like it's one of those like, yes, this is very... like I relate to this a little too hard, where you start like criticizing yourself and then you see other people, they criticize themselves and you're like, well, nothing's wrong with you. And then it goes back and forth. I love it. It's a great scene. Her mother eventually is like, oh my goodness. Okay. All these things. Y'all need to hide that away. Be a lady. I love she says that a lot too. At home, Anna's still having to deal with her mother's constant nagging about getting married and having children. Her mother even thinks that, she, the mother, may be pregnant, but turns out she's just going through the change. And then we have that moment, which I'm like, oh no, I relate more to the mother here than I do to Anna. What has happened to me? But she's talking about, yes, things have changed. She's no longer a woman and all these things. And Anna's like, Mom, that's not how this works. Like she's really like as crass and as annoyed as Anna can get, she still was loving her mom and trying to encourage her mom to make a change, to think differently. But then soon, Mr. Guzman comes by to let Anna know that not only was she accepted to Columbia University, but that she's gotten a full scholarship as well. Her mother is not happy at all, but her father is pretty excited and very proud. But the excitement goes away when they realize that she would have to move across the country away from her family. And though Anna protested, her mother guilts her, saying, "What about her grandfather?" Who Anna and her grandfather's relationship is really tight, really sweet. And so she's like, "What are you going to do? You're going to abandon him?" Which makes Anna stop and think about it. So at the same time, doing all of these things, Anna is navigating her dating life, meeting up with a schoolmate who is from a completely different social group. He's trying to learn Spanish curse words. Like, it's kind of like, what? Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. But she's able to feel confident in herself and her relationship with him, even though they know it's not going to go anywhere. But she's okay with that. She's like, look at me, see my body, see who I am. This is me. I'm like, you know what? Damn, girl. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Love that confidence. Mm-hmm. Soon she decides to take the opportunity to actually go to college. Eventually, with her father's and grandfather's blessing, she and her dad confront her mother to let her know that she's moving to New York. The day she's about to leave, she says goodbye to her sister, who has to go to work because her sister is constantly working and trying to provide for the family, and tries to say goodbye to her mother, who refuses to get out of bed. And then she heads to the airport with her father and grandfather. Then we cut to seeing her living the new life in New York with her new clothes and happiness, what I assume. End of story. I liked her fashion change when she got to New York. I'm like, yeah, I see it. I see it. Mm-hmm. I like it. I like the changes. So there's the movie. So great. Like, I feel like it's just such a sweet movie without being over the top, like tragedy porn type of thing that people often expect when it talks about immigration and families, refugee families, or any of them. Like, it's different. The story was different. The story was like real life. I love the shots that they had when they were driving through LA or East LA, showing the different perspectives, different communities. It was a great shot. And I think it's such a great movie. With that, there comes the themes. Family, obviously, is the big theme throughout. Her relationship with her mother and sister is so interesting. At first, it kind of puts me off. Like, at the way Anna approached her sister especially, it really was like, oh, why are you being mean to her? Mm-hmm. I was like, Estella's really, really trying, and you're killing all her dreams. Like, Estella probably was one of the most positive characters here, because everything she did because she loved it. Everything she did is because she felt like she was able to prove something about herself. Her designs, her ability to make the best quality dresses, her ability to provide for her community and for her friends and her family. Like, this is something really, really important to her. And yet her mother is like ripping her apart every chance that she gets.
Right. Because she doesn't have the husband. Where are the grandkids that you owe me? That was a line that I was like, oof, I have heard that before. It stings.
Thank God you have multiple children, like my family, where they have plenty of grandchildren. I'm like, we good? You've had to raise grandchildren, right? We good now? Okay, great, thanks. And then, like, the role of women, I found that interesting because, yes, as much as, like, her mom talks about supporting her husband and being home for her husband, she's the head of the family. She makes a lot of the decisions. I mean, in the end, yes, the father came in and was like, we're going to help. But, like, when she allowed for the teacher to come in, like, the father had to talk her into it. Like, all these things. But she was the head of the household. Mm-hmm. And she still was like, women should not be ahead. You know, like, she should not be lead. At the same time, she also very much relied on Stella, who was a business owner. Like, yeah, she was being taken advantage of. And yeah, the system was not set up to help her prosper. But hopefully that changes. Like, if there was a part 2, I would love to see that changed. But like, she was the breadwinner for the family partially. Like, not only her father, who had who worked in landscape and such, like, she was there providing all of these jobs for others. She is a leader in her community.
Yeah. One of the things that really struck me about this movie, well, 2 things. One is it subverts expectations, because there's so many scenes where it's like, oh, Estrella's made Anna a red dress. She'll wear it later. Oh, she's met this guy and he's either going to be the worst guy or the best guy and they'll be in love forever. Oh, at the end, the relationship with the mother will be solved, and it's not.
Right.
And I really liked that. I really liked that. But another thing that really stood out to me is in the scene where Anna takes off her clothes and they're kind of in their underwear. She's in her underwear and bra. And then the other women do it except for her mom. And her mom is fat shaming everybody and saying, this is shameful. Anna's like, but you look like us. Why are you doing this? And I feel like a lot of us can relate to having that person in our life who is a woman and who's holding you to their standard of like, well, I had to work by the age of 13 and I had to do, so you have to do that too. And if you're not, then it's like they feel hurt that they had to do it. And they're kind of lashing out on other people. Like, you should have to do it too, because I had to do it.
Right.
And so I feel like I saw that a lot with her mom. And I think like even just a bunch of the women having moments like that where you could tell they were angry they were being held to those standards, but they were kind of lashing out at other women.
Right.
Yeah. Being held not doing the thing that they think you should have to do.
Right. And like, I think this is something to do with immigrants and refugees as well. And we've seen this in the like people who uphold policies that oppress them. I've seen this a lot. And I've seen this like in Asian communities as well, in which they are saying, we as a race did this, so other races should have to do this as well. And if they can't, it's their fault and they're the problem, instead of seeing the standard of like, no, that policy is racist. Like this is not what you should have to do. And just because you had to do it shouldn't be everybody else has to do it as well. That's that same level of like, well, I was able to make it through all these things, but your circumstances were different. Like there are things that is upheld that only oppress their own, and they want to have that upheld because they had to go through it too. Same thing with like so many other things. Like if I have to suffer, you have to suffer.
Yeah.
And if you succeed without that suffering, it doesn't count and it's unfair, and you shouldn't be able to allow to do that. Not realizing the system is held up to do that very thing. And yeah, we see that with her talking about getting a husband, and like her ability to have a husband, or her I guess, her being able to say she has a husband exempts her from these standards now, which is why Estelle is a problem. Even though Estelle is doing all these other amazing things that she is proud of, but won't say she's proud of, she still only sees the fact that she doesn't have a husband. And Estella is actually, even though she never really says it, is really supportive of Anna in making sure like she can go. She wants her to go, but like knowing that this is not her path and not begrudging her of that. Realizing, I have this path, you have this path. Showing her that, as well as like, yes, like that red dress. I really love that scene in which she's like, pretty dresses aren't just for skinny girls. And I was like, and again, this is one of those moments where I'm like, but she's not that fat. What's happening here? She's not big. Like, I was very annoyed by that situation. But I mean, that's the conversation. It's like, she's just a normal sized girl. I'm sure she's more than healthy. Like, by all, like, everything that you see on her, like, they talk about cellulite. I'm like, where? Don't see it. Like, it's just an interesting concept. But then we also have the relationship with her father and grandfather. It is interesting because I like that they did not do the toxic, like, machismo perspective on any of them. I really love that it's such a loving relationship. Yes, the toxic relationship comes from the mother, which is a whole different conversation. But the fact that her relationship with her father is so pure, her relationship with her grandfather is so pure, is lovely to see. Lovely to see a family that gets along. And not only that, like the male cousins and others that live around them or with them are just as supportive of her. The serenade congratulating her was the cutest thing. Like, I love that they are able to show really healthy relationships with the men in this family. Like, it felt really nice. I was like, oh, thank God. Like,
yeah.
We know it's not always true. We know reality can be different, but we know also this can be true, and it oftentimes is, and it's not celebrated enough, especially in families of color.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice, and I appreciated sort of the messiness of it, of like, it just felt like they really understood a family dynamic. Like the scene where Anna's at the table and she's trying to write, and her mom was telling that story of the telenovela. And it just felt so like yeah, this is what
This is about
family's
right.
like. And sometimes you fight and you know each other and you know how to push each other's buttons, but then you come back and you apologize or make up or whatever it is. But it did feel very like a real family. And it was
Mm-hmm.
nice to see, yeah, they weren't the men in this situation were very supportive of her and just seemed to know who she was and be like, yeah, she's gonna go places.
Right, right. And supporting that, wanting that for her, rooting for her. And yeah, that kind of goes back to the feeling like she was supposed to help out her family. She is supposed to get married. Like she's fighting this internally. Like there's this level of like her telling Mr. Guzman, this is not, I can't do it. My family's not going to let me. I have to help my family. But yeah, she's angry because she's feels like this is an unfair role for her. And why does she have to do this? Like it's such a common conversation of like being there for your family and what do you owe your family and how tight knit they are. And then the cultural expectations of it. And their expectation was she would graduate high school, good enough, and now you can help the family. Now you have to be getting a job and putting some money here and help us all out. And we've seen that different cultures as well. And then her trying to break that cycle, being like the generation that breaks that and being able to provide in a different way by investing into herself. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, a lot of us can relate to this. I've told the story before. I felt this pressure I was like, I'll marry somebody and have a kid. It'll make my parents happy. That's what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about like, do I want that? Or like, I was just like, I just got to find some guy who says yes, which is horrible for this supposed guy, for me, for everyone. But that pressure is real. And when I tell you that line the mom said earlier, that I mentioned earlier about like, you owe me a grandkid, hit it like,
Yeah.
oof, oh my God.
Right, right. And like like her reason for wanting a baby is because no one else will give her a baby. Or thinking she's pregnant. Like, oh damn, that's a whole different conversation, ma'am.
Yeah.
And then of course another theme is coming of age. This definitely was. You have this 18-year-old, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about it with other movies, especially a lot of 2000s movies, where you're transitioning from high school to college, and that is such a big deal. Like that era during that time, and I'm sure it's still like we were talking about the whole high school dramas and then how they came about. And yes. Oh, I have to go back because we said we wanted to do an episode. I found out, I think they're saying that Beverly Hills 90210 was one of the first dramas like that.
Yeah.
High school dramas. But then I was like, what about Saved by the Bell? What about... Anyway, but the 90s and the 2000s really were like thick with high school dramas because it was such a turning of the time for individuals, especially, I don't know what it was in the 90s and 2000s. It felt big. I don't know if it came out of all of the media changing, like we're getting internet, we're getting all those things. And so it just seemed bigger. Everything seemed more at our fingertips, but also seemed so far away. Like these dreams that we thought we were supposed to have, it may not meet. Our perspective of growing up was no longer growing up, getting married, having children. It was now growing up, finding jobs, going adventuring, finding your soulmate, not just having like all these things. It changed. I feel like during that age, I don't know. If there's boomers listening, let me know if you think that your generation was like that too. And it was just me in my own head because I'm from that generation. But there's so much in this that when we see coming of age, like it feels huge. And I think, again, that's why this movie felt so like it resonated with me. And rewatching it really was like, oh my God, look at that. First of all, look at that fashion that has come back around. Secondly, yeah, it felt huge because getting into college was a bigger deal than it is now. Like it's still a huge deal, but it seems like it's gone like up to the ante a little more, where it's all Ivy League that people really want to get into, or like the higher level of education, or where they can go. Maybe I'm just playing it out in my head, because for me, getting into the University of Georgia, having that internet access with an email that had a little balloon.
Oh.
Yeah, I did. Little balloons come up to show me that I had gotten accepted was huge. It felt life-changing.
Yeah.
Life-changing. And so for her to experience this, it really was. But on top of that, Yes, like you have this idea that you're supposed to experience all of these big firsts either at the end of your high school or at the beginning of college. And that's what she felt like she had to do, but also accepting of herself because I'll tell you one thing, my confidence was not anywhere near her confidence. I really wish I did have that confidence.
Oh, yeah.
Or learning to have that confidence. Even if she was faking it, I really wish I could have gone there.
Oh, I like one of the first scenes, she goes and quits her job. And I was like, damn, girl.
You're the worst. Like, essentially, you. So she doesn't say that.
It was excellent.
It was perfect.
Yeah. She really did. It's kind of amazing because she was confident in the face of a lot of her mom, especially kind of telling her not to be.
Right.
And she had a healthy anger about that, which I appreciated. Mm-hmm. She was confident about her body, which is so rare, and that was nice. And then, yeah, I think you're right because during the 80s and 90s, we got so many coming of age movies that we watched, grew up with that said like, oh, you go to college and then your life, you'll meet someone or your life will change or whatever it will be. And so I think that was ingrained in a lot of our heads. And then for a lot of us too, if you grew up somewhere in a small town, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be a small town, but like college was a way to like, I'm gonna get out of this dynamic and try something else, which is scary and terrifying. But I think it is one of those really formative, scary, this feels life-changing. It's path this or path this.
Right.
What are you going to do? And
for her, it really was. She knew, and she said it. If I start, and then the people that she worked with said it, if I start working here at this clothing shop, I'm never going to get out. In which she says, I'm only here until I get a better job. And one of the other ladies was like, yeah, okay. That's what we said too. I'm only here until I win the lottery. Like they say things like that. And this was a massive moment for her of like, okay, if I say no to Columbia, that's it, I'm done. This is what I will be. And she had to make that choice. And it was huge, life-changing choices. It also changed her relationship with her mom. I think it's going to be fixed. Like in my head, seeing in the future, it'll be fixed because her mother's going to be exceedingly proud and want to brag about what her daughter has accomplished. But these are life-changing decisions for her, moving to New York or not moving to New York. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Even for going to Athens versus trying to go to a local college. There's massive things that happen that you never know, making a choice of being a social worker versus being, like something else completely. Like all of these things are huge choices that you don't know what it's going to be. And then looking back down the road and be like, I wish I could have changed this. I'm glad I didn't do this. Like all of these things are huge parts. And it really was a dynamic first. Like the smaller things, not so much when you realize grades don't matter, just the degree and trying not to come out in debt and much debt, all of those things are huge.
Yeah.
But like that conversation of like, these are decisions that will make a difference in my life. And coming of age is learning that you have to make those decisions really quickly.
Yeah. Pretty young.
Yeah.
One thing I thought about too watching this is, when her family is like, you can't go, her mom was like, what about your grandfather? And they have a really like tight-knit family.
Mm-hmm.
She's moving across the country before there's like cell phones. It's not like she's gonna be able to like fly home that often.
Right.
So, when I also went somewhere that was like an hour away from my home, where my parents were, I had a cell phone, like I could easily call them, but that like was an even bigger decision for her because she's going to be across the country with I guess, there are phones, but it just doesn't feel as easy.
Right. Well, also, if you don't have a lot of money, flying back and forth is not a possibility.
Exactly.
Like, she can't just go home for the holidays and she can't go home, like all these things. She's going to try to find a job there and stay there and maintain there. Like, it's going to be a while. I've thought about this. Because going to UGA, I didn't go home often, and I had to find a job at UGA, or I'd go home for the summer and have to find a job somewhere else. Like it's a significant decision, and it's only like an hour and 45 minutes away, 2 hours away, and it's felt like a huge change.
Yeah,
for so much, and going across country in itself, like going from LA to New York, had to be a culture shock.
Oh yeah,
You know, like going from Georgia to New York, we're still on the same side of the coast, but still, that's significant, obviously. So I couldn't imagine. Of course, we have to talk about the fact that they had to throw in the relationship. Not throw in. I do like that it's a sideline.
Yeah.
And it's not the majority of this. Like, it's not the big part of who she is. It's more about her finding her own footing and being confident with this boy. It's not about this boy or wanting to stay with this boy or changing her mind for a boy. It was literally about, all right, do I feel confident with you? How do I feel with you? And do I need to think all these things? Like, I love where she's like, I've written out topics for us to talk about, just in case we need help. Like things like that. I'm like, that is so honest. Yeah. I don't know if I would have I would have done it, but I don't know if I would have told him.
Right. And I really do love their sex scene where she just seems to know, yep, I know this is not going to go anywhere. I'm good with it. I want to do it. Like, she just has a good sense of, I know what I want. That's all right.
She prepared, got those condoms.
She did. She got colorful condoms.
She made sure that he saw her. She's like, turn on the light. I want you to see what I look like. I want you to see who I am. And then her looking at herself. Like, I can't do that today. I'm 40-something damn years old. I'm like, oh, turn the light off. Don't look at me. I don't, there's so many things. I don't want to look at myself. I know it's my own confidence things, y'all. I got this. But, I love that for her. And I love that perspective. I think I'm trying to remember what I felt when I saw that. I think I just felt shock. I was like, what is she doing? No, turn the lights off. Because in my head, I'm like, what are you doing? But it was looking back at it now, as if to look at my old self. I wish I could have been that, really being confident, because she's honest, and honesty in itself is such a strength, and protection. And speaking of which, body image was a huge part of this conversation. Obviously, as her mother is just chasing her down the road, telling her she needs to stop because she's too fat. These things, she doesn't look like a lady. All of these things, that was constant. Her telling Estella that, her telling all of the workers there, except for that one girl who was somewhat skinny and getting married. That was the only girl in the entirety of the place that her mother approved of.
Yeah. Some of the things she said was pretty shocking, I have to admit, because this was my first time watching it. And I was like, it was less that it was shocking, but it didn't stop. It was a non-stop. It was. Damn.
Wow. And I know people have actually experienced this for sure. I don't know. I'm assuming for the writer, this was something very personal, and that's something she has heard. We know during a certain time, it feels like we're being attacked. Hopefully, some women today, a lot of women today, deal with a trauma that was due to stuff like this. But I do love the fact, again, that Anna comes back and she is like, look, woman, you birthed us. You are part of the reason we look like this, and you don't look much better. I don't understand why you're talking to me like this.
Yeah. She came out of the fire forged into something tougher than I would have been. Right. But she was ready. Right. With those comebacks and no.
Yeah. And I think part of this is also her confidence with her grandfather and her dad, doting on her and you can tell the grandfather loves everything about her. He calls her his pretty princess, all these things, in which she has grown up and feeling a little more confident because of them. Thank God. But with that, and understanding, I think when you have the crossover where she came into Beverly Hills High School. She had to work to get to there. She has to travel, and she has to do this all on her own. This is her own initiatives. No one's helping her. As in fact, her mother was kind of holding her back, being like, you need to stay. You need to cook breakfast for the boys because I don't feel well. And she's like, nah, I gotta go to school. This is my last day of school. I don't know what you're thinking. I gotta go. And although everybody was kind of not cool, Mom, they were kind of just letting it be until Anna stands up for herself, and they're like, yeah, we got this. Go to school. Again, allowing for the mother to also go after Estella again in this midst of this conversation, which Estella had nothing to do with. She's like, why am I getting, what is this? Friendly fire. I don't understand. But like having all of that and being able to stand up for herself and knowing what she wanted and working hard for it, even if she didn't know if it was going to go anywhere. Like that was one of the other things. But again, having the confidence to call the boy. I love that scene too, calling him the hanging up. Yep. Landlines. Those landline times.
Oh, oh no.
Like use her grandpa helping her go on a date. Super cute.
Yeah.
I love all
like
this.
Covering, providing the cover.
Yeah. Talking about her breasts. She's like, are you looking at my boobs? And he's like, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Like
no, yes, no. What's the right answer?
Right. And then coming back and like being like, they're pretty big boobs, so you should be looking. Like it was a fantastic role. And America Ferrera, I really felt like she made sure to be a part of this conversation from jump, from this to Ugly Betty. Like we've seen her play these roles with confidence. The Sisterhood of Traveling Pants, I think that was all. I've never seen those. Have you seen those?
No.
I feel like that's a movie that we should have watched. This is out of my generation because it's younger.
My friends loved it.
Yeah, to y'all's age. So I was like, it wasn't necessarily in my time range, but like for our show, we probably should watch. It'd be new to both of us.
It would be.
But
It'd be a wild ride.
It would be a wild ride. But I mean, Ferrara really portrays this confident role no matter what she is, and making sure that we understand it's perfectly normal to look normal. And that's the thing. It's like none of these things are conversations about her being big. It shouldn't be, because she's really not. And we talked about this a long time ago in an episode. We talked about, what does it look like to be a normal body?
Yeah.
In a world that seems to either celebrate or pay attention to the extremes.
Right.
Or making it extremes when it's just normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is still ongoing conversation. And I think like this was really great in showing a wide showcase of different body types. But that should be the norm, because it's true. Like I have plenty of friends who are women and don't really have curves, and I have plenty of friends who have very big curves, and people in the middle. It's a whole range of bodies. Right. It's a whole thing.
Which they did a great job in portraying in that workshop moment where they all start taking things off to talk about their flaws. Like it was such a wonderful moment. I really think that's one of the scenes that really broke the barrier in that conversation. And everybody was like, every woman was like, yep, been there. Yep, doing the flabby dance. Yep, like doing all of those things.
You want to see cellulite? Let me show you this.
Let me show you this. Look at these stretch marks. Like it's a beautiful conversation. And America Ferrera's character, Anna, is celebrating it all. While everybody is like, yeah. Like uplifting each other, but tearing their own selves down. It's such a classic moment. And I think it did an amazing job in making something really realistic, but humorous, but also like heartfelt.
Yeah. That scene was really lovely, because the reason they took off their clothes was because it was so hot and they weren't allowed to use fan because it would get dust on the dresses. But I like that she just kind of was like, well, all right, I'll take off my clothes then. And the other, it's like she's a younger person who's sort of leading the older generation, like, yeah, come on now. But I did feel bad because she's steaming things, and so under like the hottest portion of work, and so no wonder she was like, I'm dying, I may have a heat stroke. Like, fair enough. That's intense in an area that doesn't have hardly any air conditioning in LA with no fan. Rough. Yeah. Yep.
But yes, I forgot how great this movie is. I think it is really touching. And I think it's a great film for young kids. Like, again, I watched this. It came out when I was 20-something. But I think it's such a good conversation to have for those who are looking at the next steps of life, and just a great story to be told.
Yeah. I really liked it too. Like I said, I thought it was it was one of those things where I was like, oh, everything's not solved at the end. Because a lot of times those movies are great. When you get to the end and you're like, yes, I love this. But sometimes it's nice because that doesn't usually happen to most of us. To see things that it wasn't horrible by any means. It was pretty good. But it's still like not everything was solved or figured out. And that's where you are at that point in your life. Usually, like, you're figuring things out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention at the front that this obviously is a story about a Mexican immigrant family who is just telling their story and what it's like being in the U.S., L.A., and trying to make it acclimate into a situation where it doesn't always feel welcoming, but you're with your family. And so not only are you navigating that, you're navigating your family life in a new culture. So like all of those things is beautiful. And I think it's a great way to tell the story. I think they did an amazing job in telling this and having this conversation.
Yes. Yes. And as you said, it has won a lot of awards. You can look it up, but it's gotten a lot of recognition, rightfully so. Well, listeners, please let us know if you have any thoughts about this or any suggestions for our next movie. We are heading into a spooky season. You can email us at stephanieandmomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite show.